game Battlefield 3, United States Marine Corps Sergeant fights against Iranians and nuclear weapons. This illustrates the fear of Iranian crazies and their emergent nuclear capabilities. But I will argue against this fear. If Iran develops nuclear weapons, the Middle East will become more stable. Why? Because nuclear weapons encourage stability between conflicting countries. Because it is Israel's nuclear monopoly that makes the Middle East unstable. And because Iran is a rational state. So as we've seen in history, nuclear weapons have encouraged stability between conflicting countries. In 1919, World War I ended. And then in 1939, World War II started. Then the United States and the Soviet Union both developed nuclear weapons. It has been 70 years so far, almost, and we have not seen a world war. In fact, there has never been a full-scale war between nuclear states once they have acquired nuclear weapons. And between already conflicting states, nuclear weapons have reduced war, as seen in the Indo-Pakistani rivalry. 1947, they had a war. 1965, a war. 1971, a war. Then in 1974, India acquired nuclear weapons, and in 1998, Pakistan acquired nuclear weapons as well. 1999, a skirmish, and nothing ever since. So we see that nuclear powers balance out. India and Pakistan, United States and the Soviet Union, Israel and this is where the problem is. Israel holds a nuclear monopoly in the Middle East, and that contributes to Middle East instability, according to Ken Waltz, senior scholar at the Salz Institute of War and Peace Studies. So how does Israel contribute to instability? By having no rival, no nuclear power to deter its actions. By its willingness to maintain that monopoly by force. In 1981, Iraq built a nuclear plant. Israel striked. And then in 2007, Syria tried to build a nuclear plant. Israel striked. Now Israel is considering to strike Iran. So as Iran develops nuclear weapons, it has two options. Either they build a bomb, or they stop just short of it. Just like Japan, who has nuclear capabilities, but does not weaponize. So according to Waltz, while the United States and its European allies may find that scenario, an acceptable solution, Israel finds it still a threat. What will it do? It might strike Iran before it actually builds the bomb. So we see how nuclear balance creates stability and nuclear imbalance creates instability. But the countries I've mentioned are all rational. What about Iran? Is Iran rational? Hasn't its president Mahmoud Ahmadinejad stated that he wants to wipe Israel off the map? Well, in terms of these crazy nuclear rhetorics, founder of Communist China, Mao Zedong, totally owns Ahmadinejad. He has declared that he welcomes a nuclear world war, and that in China, 400 million will die, 200 million will survive, and in due time, they will repopulate. But whatever these crazy remarks, the states, especially the nuclear states, continue to act rationally. And there's no reason to believe that Iran will not do the same. Iran is just as rational. It prioritizes self-preservation over some 72 virgins in heaven. Mohsen Milani, the executive director for Center of Strategic and Diplomatic Studies for the University of Southern Florida, explains that Iran's foreign policy is formulated not by religious madmen, but by calculating religious leaders, whose priority is survival for the Islamic Republic. Also, Iran's pursuit of nuclear weapons is partly due to the threat of not only Israel's nuclear weapons, but also the United States. Walsh illustrates their anxiety. He said that if George Bush says that Iran, Iraq, and North Korea form an axis of evil and then proceeds to invade one of them, what are Iran and North Korea to think of? In sum, since nuclear weapons encourage stability between conflicting countries, since Israel's nuclear monopoly contributes to Middle East instability today, and since Iran is a rational country, we would see a stabler Middle East in the wake of nuclear Iran.
All right, the claim is stated as a conditional argument, and I think that's okay. The secondary points are labeled pretty clearly at the beginning. You do want to make sure that those are the key issues. The proof on a couple of the points is dependent upon historical examples and analogies that you're drawing, and I think you need to demonstrate that those, in fact, are legitimate comparisons, so they could be strengthened a little bit more by drawing the parallels a little bit more. You know, the World War II, World War I comparison, and the absence of war since then does not necessarily suggest that it is merely the presence of the nuclear weapons between the two main superpowers. And by the way, with the best example that you have, I think, is the one with the nuclear states in Asia, there, Pakistan and India, and I think that that's a pretty good illustration. But basically, you just say Pakistan and India. You don't give us any explanation that that is, in fact, a calculated decision on their part not to go to war because of the threat of nuclear retaliation or potential problems. And you say skirmishes. I'm not exactly sure that it's always remained skirmishes, and there are continuing escalating issues that are going on there. I'm not sure that the nukes have cooled that down. I think you've given us kind of a partial description of the example that's going on there, and a more complete description would be either more convincing on your side, or maybe it would reveal weaknesses in your side. Like I said, as it is, it's only as far as it goes here that you've got that particular point. The notion that the Iraqis are, not the Iraqis, the Iranians are on the third point, that they are, in fact, acting in a rational way. You do have an authority that gives a little bit of testimony on that particular point, but it's very conclusionary without giving an explanation as to how that conclusion was reached. And I do think that we need to see a little bit stronger information on that point, because that's the main issue that people are worried about. in the Middle East. I do think you left out one of the key elements of the equation that everybody seems concerned with, and that is the relationship between the Iranians and potential terrorist groups, and the idea that Iran would confront Israel, for instance, directly with nuclear weapons. I'm not sure that that's the big issue that people are concerned about. Like you said, we've got two powers that they're likely to get into in a standoff, much like India and Pakistan. But the access to the technology or the weapon systems themselves to groups like Hezbollah or Hamas, which is acting as a proxy for Iran in the area. I think that is one of the things that people are concerned about, and you don't talk about that issue at all. So I think that that's something that kind of gets left out of the equation. I did like the fact that you had a couple of authorities who make that particular point. Like I said, it does seem like it's a little speculative, but it's a lot more convincing with those authorities than it would have been without them. I thought you had a good summary of the argument at the end also, and that's a good way to make that point more convincing at the exit. All right. Thank you.